I like to talk about this all in thought process because I think that as a child of the 90s and the 2000s, that's what I was told. And especially, I have two, I have parents who are immigrants to the United States, and my mother is Chinese. And being an immigrant, a child of immigrants, plus having a Chinese mother, you were performing. I mean, performance was important, and achievement was really important. And one of the things that I was taught was you you have to go all in. Like, if you're gonna do it, you gotta do it and burn the boats, right? We all know that phrase. I don't know if we all know that phrase, but in startup language, a lot of the some of the not a lot, but some of this the startup founders I've talked to is like, don't I have to burn all the boats, right? Like I gotta go all in. And I get that mentality, but I think that there's a way to think about, how can I achieve success without feeling like the only thing I'm focusing is on this identity. And the reason I started to think about it, and I can tell you about my story, but I was working with, um, as Inga and Joe were too, we were working with physicians at Brigham. I was working with startup founders, and their whole lives were centered around their work, and their whole identity was very constricted to the achievement at work, right? So my self worth and everything that I have is centered around that. And I think for a time when you're pushing, right, Gentari, you're working with a lot of founders, it does take up and suck up a lot of time and energy. But I think that one of the things that I hope that we think about is yes, and, right? So, yes, it is important to be serious about what you're doing and care, but also taking care of how we're forming our identities, how we're forming this sense of self worth, and how we're anchored in our lives. So, in my story is really just I don't think I was as resilient as I could have been as an athlete. And I'm saying that as someone who did achieve things, but I think about, gosh, I could have been, I think I would have, one, enjoyed my process of making it to the Olympics. And actually, I didn't, what people don't say is like, I actually failed to make uh, two teams after that. And also, I struggled a ton after the Olympic Games, trying to get better. And I think I really truncated my career a lot and what I could accomplish because all of my identity was based in being an Olympian and being an athlete. One of the things that I think if I were to give myself some advice is to anchor myself in connections and relationships and the people around, asking for help, creating a hobby in my life. And I don't know if you guys seen, like, there's that British diver that, like, knits.
Yes.
And why didn't anyone show me how to knit, right? Like, and I think of this now, like, I have trouble now. I'm working at Deloitte now, and so much of my everyday, I really have to try very hard not to go back to the computer, not to log in again, right? And I love my kids, and I'm very anchored in being a mom, but it is very hard not to want to ring the bell of achievement constantly because it feels so good and gets so validated externally, right? Like, gosh, if you do well at Deloitte, it sounds really good, right? Like, but if I'm a really good mom, really who's going to care? Me and my kids, right? So, like, that sort of invisible stuff, right? So the investments in the invisible places. And the reason I say that too is because working at Deloitte, what I see is, so I work in the integrated mental health services and on the performance psychology side. And one woman gave a presentation to the partners and principals there, and she said, "Look, like, this company will give you a bell, and every time you ring it, they'll give you more money, more stress, more work, more people, more accolades, more, 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 and more. But they will never give you a bell to take care of yourself, to ring the bell to be a mom, to ring the bell, for all the other things, right? Like, certainly no one's giving you a bell to ring if you're going to be knitting, right? so so I think that was really important is no one's going to create that bell for you. And jobs will suck everything they can out of you to ring that bell, which is good and bad, right? Like, it was good. Me making an Olympic team was a great achievement and has opened a ton of doors, which I can't forget. However, the pathway to getting there and the longevity and sustainability of that, I think looking back on it could have been a bit better having had more anchors. I call them anchors in your life or investment in the anchors. And I think more specifically about investment in the relationships that I had, because I often would say, I can't hang out with you. I have to get up, or I can't do this. I can't, make time for these friends, or I have to get back and I got to do another fencing thing or whatever it was. And the truth of the matter is, I could have made time. I could have made time, but I was so invested in what I wanted from fencing that it just I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't shift. So anyway, so that's kind of my story and kind of where I got this like, gosh, I really like the idea of talking about how going all in, right, is not a recipe for success.